All right. It looks as though we are live. Go ahead and kill the music for a little bit here. All righty. I think we're here. I think we're live. Everything seems to be going. Let's see how long we can go without the computer crashing tonight. Yahoo! All right. Folks, hi. How's it going? Welcome to Staghammer Studio. I am, as always, your host, Wes. We're going to be doing a little bit of hobby stuff tonight. I'm going to be working on a couple little things here, but before we get into that, I just want to say hello. Those that are catching this live will notice that it is not, in fact, Friday. It is Thursday, and that is because my wife and daughter and I are going out of town for the weekend. So that means I'm recording a stream a day early so that I have something to post to YouTube day of. So hopefully with a little bit of internet magic, this will go live at the appropriate time on Friday night on YouTube. But for the rest of you fine folks that tune in live, ta-da, here I am. So, hello, Sherry. We are, we're doing well here at my humble abode. The family is doing well. I hope all of you out there are doing well also. I know it's a little weird out there right now, but as the states are sort of reopening slowly but surely, remember, wear your mask and be safe out there. Just because restaurants are reopening and other things are reopening does not mean you can run around without a mask on, hugging everybody in sight. So be good, be safe, yeah. So let's see. Do I have any particular news at the top of the show here? Not really. This week kind of flew by. It was my wife's return to work, speaking of things reopening and people getting back to work. So the early part of this week, I came home from work just in time for the what I affectionately refer to as the baby handoff, where I come home and my wife says, "Here, have a baby," and then she leaves for work. So that was the first couple of days of my week, and everything since then has kind of been a blur. But we're okay. We're doing okay. Work itself has been a little bit crazy, as it's just super, super hot and super, super humid, and it's a warehouse. So, but I don't really know what else to say about it. But anyway, nobody's here to listen to me wax poetic about my amazing day job. So let's get on sort of to the meat of the show. So the last couple of streams, I've been working on. I've been doing a bunch of work, kind of on and off, on my undead army for Warhammer Age of Sigmar. And I'm kind of taking this week to be maybe a little bit of a break. We'll kind of see what all we get to. I do have, from a past show, you may remember that I painted up a series of 4 of these pillars from one of the Age of Sigmar terrain kits. So I kind of got to this particular point and put it on off to one side and just kind of said, well, I'll finish it later. Well, it's later. I never got to it off camera, and it's been sitting, taking up space on my actual hobby desk, and I would like very much to have it not be here anymore and put it on the done shelf behind me. So we're going to plow through that for the first bit of the show, and if we have time, because you know how these things go, if we have time, I will switch on over to working on some of those skeletons from the last couple of weeks that I was kind of plugging away on. And that's pretty much the plan for the show. So without any further ado, let's get the light in place and we're gonna switch on down. So I had enough foresight to pull out the paints that I intended to use tonight, but I did not actually put them onto my wet palette yet because, well, you know, I got stuff to do. And, you know, the wife came home with some Chipotle, which I haven't had in ages, and quite frankly forgot how delicious a burrito is from Chipotle. And boy, oh boy, did that ever do wonders. I feel human again after eating a good old burrito. Anyway, so we're going to bring these pillars back in, like so. Actually, while I'm thinking about it, we are going to... where is my mouse? Come on, stupid. Get that music going again. All right. So, actually, something else sort of newsworthy in terms of the stream. The last couple of weeks in particular, I've had a little bit of trouble, usually towards the top of the show. But I have had a little bit of issue towards the tail end as well with my computer crashing. This is a long-standing problem with this computer. It is probably 10 plus years old at this point. Well, close to. I don't know exactly, but it's somewhere in that range, let's say. So it's an old computer, and it's been having this particular issue for quite some time. I thought it was possibly related to the video card, which it might be. I bought a new video card and we installed it, and it still did not work. In fact, it just wouldn't even boot up past like the loading screen. So I'm in the process. I'm going to be buying a new motherboard and a new processor and some new RAM. And right now I'm about halfway saved up for what I need for that stuff. So that should be coming, I'm hoping, in the next couple, like whatever remainder I have, the next couple of paychecks, I'll kind of squirrel a little something aside so that I can get that computer fixed up so that hopefully I'm not getting any sort of crashes from now on. But, so that's pretty much all else I can think of in terms of like legitimate news. Oh, actually, no, I lied. There's one more thing. I mentioned this, I believe it was at the end of last show, but I want to bring it up now sort of at the top while I'm fresh and kind of sort of thinking about it, which clearly I just forgot about until right now. Once I get my computer fixed up, so probably we'll call it like a month or so from now. My game plan is to switch over from streaming on Facebook here back over to streaming on YouTube, because ultimately that is the sort of the platform that I was looking to grow on. And I've been doing sort of okay on Facebook, but the reason I set up here was because this is where more people were sort of tuning in. But I've been kind of keeping an eye on analytics and stuff like that. And analytics being what they are, my YouTube channel has not been seeing the same number of views in the same quantity that it was sort of more towards the beginning. And that's because I started by streaming there and then switched over to streaming on Facebook, but was then uploading the videos there. So there wasn't a lot of rewatching, obviously, going on. So the stuff was going up onto YouTube. And then, you know, it might get a few views up there of like, you know, maybe some friends that didn't quite get to catch it, or, you know, random people that sort of happen to cross it. At least I hope that's, you know, some people are happening across it and enjoying it. But anyway, the idea is that, you know, I want to grow that channel. So I want to switch things back over to being streamed there. And then I will sort of like link out to it on all of my socials, including Facebook. And at some point I will end up setting up a restreaming service so that I can stream, like simulcast and stream to both platforms at the same time. That's sort of like the ultimate goal, but that has like a sort of a monthly cost associated with it that up until now I haven't really been sort of in a place or even like a mindset to really kind of fiddle with too much. More so just out of like, you know, was it something I was going to enjoy long term? Did I want to, you know, was it something I would stick with? That kind of thing. I didn't want to start throwing extra money around that I didn't have to. If, you know, I was only going to do like a couple of streams and be like, man, it's not really for me. But the more I do it, the more I enjoy it. So I figure it's probably ultimately going to be worth that investment. But yeah, Sherry, I just saw your comment now. The burritos were in fact delicious. I find that chicken burritos are often the way to go from Chipotle, or just in general. So I know some people aren't necessarily a fan of Chipotle, and, you know, that's fine. Some people are entitled to be wrong. So I'm starting out here with something that's probably a little bit different for this set of pillars, but I'm probably going to end up going back to some of the previous pillars that I did and adding this step in particular. But I'm using this dark blue ink wash here, just diluted with a little bit of water, and I'm going over this one little sort of like ring towards the bottom, and then there's a similar ring up towards the top right here. And I'm going to hit both of these, and this tints the gray and or black of the undercoat ever so slightly in the blue direction, which just sort of like breaks up the monotony of the gray a little bit, and I think just kind of makes them a little bit more interesting to look at. At least that's the hope. So we're gonna do this across all of them, and then once this is done, I'm going to do the flame on the torches. And as I have explained once again on previous streams, all of the flame on all of this set I've been doing in blue tones. So it's been like bright blue flame. And of course, the reason behind that, as far as I'm concerned, is that this terrain is all intended for Shaiish, the realm of death. And everything is infused with just a little bit of death magic. And for me, in my mind and in my world, the death magic is all sort of like light blue in color. So all of the creatures that I've been painting up, all the undead things, have like a creepy light blue glow to the eyes. Any sort of like magic items are picked out with a similar blue glow. All the fire has a similar blue glow because, you know, for me, in my sort of head canon and in my particular little world, it's all sort of like magic flame anyway, so it just kind of makes sense to me. And let's be honest, it looks cool, so that's what more reason does one need? So I'm just in a quick little, I mean, I'm sure this is technically a wash, but it's also like, it's just kind of a glaze with this, putting it on real thin, not letting it really soak up into the like recesses at all. I'm just kind of just tinting ever so slightly the, like I said, the grays and the blacks here. So I hope everybody is, as I said, having themselves a good week. I realize we haven't hit the end just yet, but I hope everyone's doing well since the last show. If anybody listening along happens to be working on a project of their own, whether it be painting or whatever other hobby of choice you happen to have, whether that be baking or cross-stitching or sewing, whatever, let me know either in the chat or if you're watching this not live. First of all, I recommend you do so. But if you happen to be catching this on the playback, let me know in the comments what you're working on while you're watching it. It's never a mandatory thing, but I highly encourage it. It's the spirit of why I started these. Okay, so those blue rings are done. You can see here that it just slightly changed like the tint and the tone of these two little bands of stone on the pillars there. So I already based the fire. I did this, I believe, when I was on the stream last working on these, but I based the fire in just like a very light gray. That actually, as I'm kind of looking at it in this light, has ever so slight of a blue tint to it. But that being said, I'm going to be going over it in an even lighter blue gray, it's a blue tinted white, like a cold white. So this is Althuan Gray from Citadel, and I'm going to be basing all of the flames in this. You want to start when it comes to fire, it's like shading in reverse. The high points you want to be darker in color, and then the low parts, the low points, which are closer to the center where it's hotter, that's where you want the light colors to be. So we start with a base coat of something light. And I have to remind myself sometimes that I've already put paint onto the palette for myself. I did that earlier while I was talking, if you noticed. So anyway, so we're just going to come in and throw a couple of thin base coats onto each of these. Keep it nice and simple. And the sort of sconce or brazier, I'm not sure exactly what the technical classification is. Since it's hanging off of the wall, I'm tempted to call it a sconce. But the thing holding the torch will be painted. On the other ones, I painted them all kind of a brass color. But I'm sort of rethinking that decision a little bit. And I'm going to try. I picked up this new gold paint from Vallejo. It's from their Vallejo's metal color line, and it's just gold. And it's not like a weird fancy name or anything. But I want to try a different set in this because this is sort of the gold color that I've been using on most of my troops. So it's a color that appears throughout the world that I'm creating here and throughout the throughout my army in particular. And it'll be a nice way to kind of tie the two together, probably. It's sort of my thought process. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at. So a lot of this, and I've again mentioned this on the stream a time or two, but it bears repeating because I've sort of entered as the COVID situation it has been reaching the point where things are starting to reopen, and we're at least getting to a point where we're not necessarily looking at it going away anytime soon, but we're at least getting to a point where we're a little bit more sort of like comfortable dealing with it, as unfortunate as that is to say, because it looks like we may be doing just that for a little bit, but anyway, I digress. I have started in the last couple of days trying to finally make some headway writing down, like, the little rule bits as well as like background stuff for my army in particular, but rule stuff for the campaign, the narrative campaign that I'm going to be running for my gaming group. So my friend Jason and my other friend Joe, and perhaps my brother Colin as well, are planning to take part in a campaign that I'm developing, because I had this sort of like brainchild of, hey, wouldn't it be cool to play a series of games of Age of Sigmar that were all linked together in a campaign-style narrative. As we are all also fans of Dungeons and Dragons, and by extension role-playing games in general, we thought, or I thought at least, like, hey, what if we were playing like a D&D but with armies? So the characters weren't necessarily just a character, but your character was your faction, your army, your race, your whatever. Faction is the preferred word. So, for instance, my faction is going to be the Undead faction, which is Legions of Nagash in my particular case, as there are multiple undead factions technically. And then my friend, I think both Jason and Joe are planning on doing different takes, different iterations on Cities of Sigmar. So I think they picked different cities to base their armies off of, and with that comes like slightly different rule sets. And I believe when last I checked in with them, they were both planning on doing, as I said, Cities of Sigmar. But just, two slightly different takes on it. And so it was basically going to be, the idea is that this campaign is going to be the story of our respective armies as we grow in Shaiish, the Realm of Death. So that's kind of the game plan. And my added challenge to myself, because putting a campaign together and running it for a couple of friends, obviously that's not hard enough. So I gotta ramp it up to hard mode on my first try. I'm going to be filming it and doing a series of battle reports and putting those up on my YouTube channel. So a lot of this terrain that I had started painting a while ago was going to be used specifically for this campaign. In fact, a lot of the armies that I've been painting over the last, technically speaking, a couple of years have been with this type of thing in mind. But I just recently started, as I said, working on the particulars and making sure that I had, written, so it's not just like in my head and I'm trying my best to remember everything and pass that information along to the players. And I think part of it too, I'd like to, if I can get all of the little additions in place, because we're going to be tweaking some of the basic Age of Sigmar rules and stuff, as it is narrative play. Like, we don't have to worry too much about making sure everything's like crazy balanced. It's not like we're playing a tournament here. We're just trying to tell some cool stories, so it doesn't really matter. I mean, obviously we don't want, I don't want myself or any other player to, somehow be crazy overpowered. But at the same time, I want to make sure we've all got some cool stuff to do and can tell a fun story, and hopefully walk away with this with some good memories and some cool stories of, hey, you remember that time in that campaign, that cool thing that we did, that epic battle, that one thing happened. So that's kind of the plan. So a large part of what I've been working on was, as I said, the in addition to the rules that I'm going to be adding in or adapting or changing, I'm also going to be working on the background, sort of the backstory of my character, and specifically my general, because he's basically the sort of the backbone of the army. So the general of my army is a vampire lord, and so my sort of initial plans are by the end of the summer is the goal I have set for myself. I will have recorded, hopefully edited, and posted my first battle report, and it will likely be one that I play against myself. If I'm being realistic, I'm not expecting necessarily that things will have gotten to a point where my gaming group and I are comfortable, because we all meet at my house, and I have a 2-year-old daughter running around, and I'm not entirely sure I'm comfortable having people come over that are going to be around for, you know, like several hours, and my daughter might be running around, and like I don't want to, like, you know, obviously get her sick by accident. So, you know, we're trying to be cautious and sensible about it. But so my game plan is essentially I'm going to get some of these battle reports. The initial battle reports that I'm going to do, like I said, it's going to be basically me playing against myself, but it's going to be it's essentially going to be like the origin story of my general and my army. At least that's kind of what I've decided to do with it. And that way, too, it's like, not only is it going to be a good introduction to the premise of the campaign, as well as to my army. And eventually what I'd like to do is do one of these for each of the other players, and just have like a short, like, series of small, like, skirmish level games that basically, like, set up their story. Yeah, so I think that's kind of my thinking at this point. Did I finish all my thoughts on that? I don't know. But yeah, so that's what I was trying to say. So I have in mind, I'm gonna, like I said, do probably like a couple of short, like, skirmish style things where it's just like, you know, my vampire lord and like maybe a couple of other models facing off against whatever. And like I said, it'll be an introduction to the general, introduction to the army, but it's also a good, like, sort of like learning experience and tutorial for me, teaching myself not only how to film, but how to then sort of like edit and stuff like that, all of these battle reports, and get them hopefully looking good, and you know, post it up for those that are interested. Worst case scenario, if for whatever reason nobody is actually interested in it, then they are preserved for me and my friends to look back on fondly, and that's good enough for me. But hopefully somebody else out there will enjoy them as well. All right, so we're basically switching over to some dry brushing now, and we're going to be doing some pretty thorough dry brushing in this bright blue. This, by the way, for those that are following along at home, this is Baharoth blue. Again, Citadel colors. That's primarily what I own. Most of them were given to me for free, so that's just kind of what I've been using for a while. I do have a collection of other paints as well, but this tends to be just what I know best right now, so it's what I use most frequently. But anyway, so all that aside, I'm going to be dry brushing all of this flame fairly thoroughly. We're leaving some of the white showing in the deepest recesses. I don't know how well you can see that. I realize that this light is probably bleaching that out to a fair... There we go. If I move the light back, it's a little less drastic, and you can see the blue with white sort of in the recesses and the cracks. So that's the idea. That's what we're going for here. So we just get a little bit of that blue on our brush, scrub it off, and then I'm just kind of using circular motions to just kind of like jam it in everywhere it needs to be. And I'm going to be doing this with all the other colors, just sort of to a lesser degree, and covering less and less of the flames, to get like a reasonable sort of blend and progression going from one color to the next. So, but yeah, that's the gist of what I've been working on in terms of stuff for the channel and stuff for my campaign and my personal gaming group. I'm super excited about it, quite frankly. And actually, I did pre-order the new General's Handbook that is coming out from Games Workshop for Age of Sigmar. Which, for those who aren't familiar, it's basically, I believe it's a yearly publication. It's a book that they put out once a year, and it contains, first and foremost, it contains any new rules changes to the game itself. Like if it's almost like think of it like in video games terms, it's like a content patch. So they'll add new battle plans. They'll add any new like rules changes. If there's something major they need to change or clarify, they'll do it there. Points changes for any of the units. That's a big one. Then they'll usually add like some other stuff in there too, just kind of for fun. Again, like narrative use stuff. And in this one in particular, there is just such an item that I personally am super excited about and could not be coming out at a more timely time. Boy, that's redundant. Anyway, it could not be coming out at a better time, because as I said, I'm trying to work on a narrative campaign. And what is this item, you say? It is a hero character generator. So you can pick a hero of whatever faction / race your character happens to be. And then, presumably, you will get to pick various abilities for them, stats for them, and there is a built-in leveling up system, which was something I was planning on adding for the heroes in the armies, so that they would gain a little bit of XP as they. That's experience points for those that aren't familiar. But they would gain some form of experience points for being in games. So you would have to have them in your list. You would have to use them, and specifically, they would gain 1 experience point per victory point that they earn you for any particular game. So in order to gain experience, they have to capture an objective and sit on that and earn you points. So sometimes that means you really might like this one hero and he's like the best guy you have at fighting, but you need to throw him on a defensive objective just to keep it and get him some experience because you need him to level up for one reason or another. So it makes for some interesting in-game decisions, I thought. And so that was one of the ideas that I had. And I'm curious to see what, because I haven't really looked into it too much, and there's been a bunch of leaks about it. But I haven't seen any of them about the specifics of that particular feature. So again, when I get my hands on that book, I'm curious to give it a thorough read, particularly that section, and see how that might benefit what I have in mind. So I'm really excited about it, is the short version. Okay, so we're going to double check all of these. I see I need a little bit more of this color on this particular flame. And we're just checking to make sure we have the level of coverage from this particular dry brush that we want. Nothing super fancy. And I think with that, yeah, we're pretty good. Everything else will get covered up with the following colors. So we're moving on to our next blue, which is a slightly darker blue. So we started out with a base coat like this. We then went to a dry brush of a light blue like this. We're now going to a medium blue like this one here. And this is going to be, again, closer to the tops and tips of the flames, and any low, like, tongues of flame that are particularly separated and well pronounced. Those will be getting a little bit as well. And then afterwards, we'll be going to this dark blue teal. This is Stegodon scale green. And then black for the very, very tips where the flame turns to smoke and everything sort of carbonizes? Is that the word? I don't know. That's what I'm going with. That sounds like a word that would pertain to fire. So we're going with it. All right. So this medium blue is sort of our mid-tone here, and this is probably going to end up being most of the color of the fire. But that light blue that I dry brushed on before will certainly be visible here and there, and as I said before, the white or cold white, near white, whatever, that will certainly be visible in the deepest recesses and cracks. But you can see how that, or maybe you can't, I don't know, let's pull that light back a little bit. There we go. You can see how you've got, like, again, the white in the recesses, like in here, and then you've got the light blue kind of in this area here and in like the deeper recesses towards the top, and then the darker blue is starting to form up there pretty nicely. This is what we're doing. So honestly, on the tops here, we want to just make sure that we're getting like as much as possible coverage with this. There's not really any reason for white up in these recesses because it's far enough removed, I think, from the sort of source of the flame, as it were. It's, I guess, worth noting, I did not like rinse or wash my brush in between these steps. The paint mixing and the bristles kind of helps blend everything together anyway, so it's, I don't know, it's not super necessary and helps, I think, helps the finish a little bit. Whoops. Clumsy hands, knocking everything over. One thing I kind of feel like I should have figured out on here is, I don't know, maybe I'll do it with airbrush, or maybe I'll try and dry brush onto the stone or something like that. But I think it would be kind of nice to get like a little bit of the blue glow from the fire onto the surface of the stone pillars behind it. Kind of give a little bit of realism to it. Truth be told, I think the reason I haven't done it so far is because I can't decide which of the colors to use. I don't want to use the lightest color because I don't think that would be appropriate. I don't know if this mid-tone would be the way to go, or some combination between this mid-tone and the light blue, or the mid-tone and the dark blue. I feel like because it's light, my gut instinct is do the reverse of what I'm doing here and use the dark blue as like a broad sort of dry brush around it, or I guess again airbrush could work for this too, if I mask off the flame itself so that I don't hit it. But around where the fire would be hitting the pillar, do the dark blue in a broad sense, and then narrow in on the flame so that right behind it would be maybe not the white, but maybe like the light blue, just a little spot of it, and then have like, you know, around that you've got a little bit of the mid-tone, and then around that a little bit of this like dark teal as it like fades from there. I don't know. I think that's probably the way to do it if I'm sort of brainstorming now. which I guess technically I am. But anyway. Actually, I suppose, before I go and do that, which won't be today, I tell you that right now, go ahead and leave a comment and let me know how you would handle it. Because that would actually might probably be very helpful to me in this particular case. So anyway, I like getting new ideas, and if there's another thing that you think should be done, then I'm all ears. All right, where am I? I have it right here. You know, sometimes. All right, so we're gonna get this dark teal. Getting our good, always trying to get our pretty decent coverage on the top here. We want to make sure, again, that those lighter blues kind of show through in the deeper recesses towards the top. But we're not going to have any, of that, like, white poking through up here. We're going to kind of just stipple and dry brush and whatever. Make sure that we've got good coverage on the tippy tips, but that we're just kind of hitting the surfaces, any sort of like raised surfaces, just a wee bit. So. Again, good coverage on the tippy tips. Just a little dusting, blending it into the rest of the blue. One more for this stage. We'll move on to black, and we're just going to get like the super little tippy tips. The extreme tips, if you will. All right, that's good. I am happy with that. All right, and lastly, a wee bit of black. This is just kind of dressing the tips. For where the fire sort of turns to smoke, starts to kind of drift off from the torch itself. Brings a nice end to the transition of blues. So we have almost going from an almost white to what ends up being an almost black, because there's still a little bit of that dark teal mixed in there. There's a little bit of all the previous blues that are mixed in there. I think I'm happy there. That looks pretty good to me. So we're going to dunk our dry brush. It is now no longer a dry brush, as it is no longer dry. We're going to give it a good rinse. Try our best to get all of that blue out of there. Actually, this might be... Where did I put it? This might be a good excuse to break out the brush cleaner I just got. So get this open. Let's get it damp. we're just going to give it a little swizzle in here. So we'll work that into a bit of a lather. Work some of that paint out. Get it wet. There we go. Kind of like shampooing hair in general. The first time, you never quite get that lather. That's why you gotta rinse and repeat, right, guys? Rinse and repeat. All right. So here, we're gonna keep working at. I think that's pretty good. I don't think we're getting any better, at least not right now. Just gonna give this a little wipe. Clean that out a little bit, and we're good. All right. Hopefully that brush won't get destroyed as quickly. I just whacked my camera, didn't I? Yes, I did. All right, let's fix that a little bit. All right, take a little sip of water out here. All right. Now, hopefully, you guys can see what's going on here. But you've got the bright blue in the, or the bright white in the center and the deepest bits, and then that goes to a light blue, into a medium blue, into a dark blue, into a black. And that is how we paint blue fire. So that's done. So we are done with this palette for now. Next step is going to be painting all the metalwork on the, again, I'm going to go with sconce. Sconce seems like the right word. Let's try this brush. A piece of paper towel. For all you painters and hobbyers out there, always keep paper towel on hand. Keep a roll nearby, you're gonna need it. God's forbid you spill paint or something and just light back down, get it out. Try and get it a little bit out of my face, out of the camera shot there. Paint a mix. All right. We're going to see if this brush does some. This was a terrible brush, and then I cleaned it out a while back, and it seems to be okay. We're going to try it for this particular application and see how it does, and if I don't like it, I've got others. We're getting this whole sort of sconce area. Now, there's kind of a part of me that thinks maybe I should paint these sconces first and then do all of the dry brushing and stuff like that. Be really neat with the initial base coat and some of the dry brushing. Simply because you get like the blues that stick on the high points of the sconce, like on the skull bits here, and it gives a nice like what's called OSL for those that aren't familiar with that. That is object source lighting, and you know, gives the illusion that light is coming off of this thing and reflecting off of the metal. Realistically, this brush seems to be doing okay. Still not a great brush, but it's okay for this application at least, so kind of note to self that, and bring it back into rotation for things other than applying texture paint. So that was basically all it was good for. It's already chunky and gross. Sorry if I'm sort of falling silent here. Just trying not to get gold paint on any of the flames that I just painted. I do like the this gold color, however. So the golds I was using before, it was more of like a bronzy color, coppery maybe. I don't know. I think it was in the bronze range, but or brassy tones. Yeah. So the it's definitely a brass. Anyway, enough about that. Hung up on that. Moving on. It was a lot warmer, is what I'm getting at, because it was brassier and had a little bit more sort of reds in it. And a lot of what I'm going for with this is I want it to feel cold. And on my characters, and anybody in my army that has gold, I've been using a color similar to this, and I've switched over to using this color to try and give that illusion of cold gold, which is, you know, like, obviously there's warm golds and then there's cold golds, and the cold golds just lack a lot of that warmth, a lot of that red, so in this particular case, I like that aspect of it, and I want to sort of emphasize it. So, anywho, that's one of the things I like about this color, is that it looks very cold to me, and so it pulls off that effect nicely. For those of you out there that happen to know the Citadel paint range well, or even not like super well, Balthazar Gold was the color I was using previously for a lot of the metalwork. And after buying this color and testing it on a few things, I am very tempted to go back and sort of repaint some of that stuff, because I like the effect that this has quite a bit. It's the right temperature. Is that a thing when talking about paint colors and light? Yeah, well, light can have temperature. Anyway, I think I'm going off on a bit of a tangent here, but all right. Nice and shiny and gold. But it definitely lacks the warmth of its predecessors. So we're just rinsing and repeating, and we're doing this on all 4 of these pillars, on all of these torches, sconces. and I'm pretty sure sconce is the right word. I don't know why I'm so obsessed with that right now. I like thinking I know the words to things and can express myself pretty well most of the time. I'm pretty sure that, technically speaking, brazier is usually on the floor. You know, a wall sconce is a thing. It usually has lighting or candles or something like that, so I assume it can be applied to torches. But if you know differently, let me know in the chat, or let me know in the comments. I am not above being corrected. The interesting thing that's kind of happening here is with only one coat of this gold, because it's a very yellow gold, and it's not like, you know, as I said, it's not like a ruddy, coppery gold. The blue paint underneath it is mixing with that yellow and giving it like a green, almost patina, like age, even though gold doesn't necessarily patina. Or doesn't like at all patina. It's one of the qualities of gold. Doesn't tarnish or anything, but it's still an interesting effect that I don't hate. It's worth noting that, but I'm still throwing on a second coat just to make sure that it's good in gold. But there's probably a little bit of that green that kind of pops through here and there, and quite frankly, I think that just adds to the eerie coldness of it. Ultimately, I'm okay with it. Oops. So that where I didn't want it, right on the flame. So with a wet brush, we're going to try and pull that back up. I think we did it. Not too bad. Good news, guys. I think we saved Christmas. Another thing I super like about this paint is, unlike most other metal paints that I've used, predominantly, admittedly, the Citadel range of metallic paints, but those paints in particular are known for not being great metallic paints. But even like the Army Painter brand of metallic paints, which are very similar in a lot of respects, they are very thick paints, and you kind of like, you want to thin them so that you put on like a nice thin even layer, but if you thin them too much, then the pigment starts to like separate, and the pigments themselves are ground more coarsely than the pigments used in this paint, it seems. And so you can get like a much better finish with this paint because it doesn't look like you used like gel paint with glitter in it. Best way I can describe it. It's good to me. At least good enough. All right. That's 2 done. That leaves 2 to go. we're gonna try switching up the brush. A wee bit bigger, at least with a bigger belly. Paint right up to the ferrule there, so I wanted to rinse that immediately. See how we're doing on time here. 8 o'clock. All right, so we got about an hour left to go. And these should easily be done within that time. Depending on how much time is left, which again should be ample, we'll likely switch over to another project. Sort of a matter of which one. See what's within arm's reach, because I don't feel like getting up in the middle of the stream to go hunt for something else. And I noticed when I started this, after I said I would probably work on those skeletons, they are actually not where I thought they were. I had just magnetized the bases of several of my models that were sitting on my desk waiting for that particular step, and I have recently purchased some more of the particular plastic bins and cookie sheets that I use for storage for my painted minis, and so I needed to pick up some new ones because my collection has grown over recent weeks and months in terms of the stuff that's actually like painted and done and ready. So it was nice to finally get the storage I need for that. Right. So, let's see. I'm just trying to think what other sort of interesting hobby stuff is going on. Just really interested and excited to get my hands on the aforementioned General's Handbook. This will actually be, I've been playing this game for a few years now, and somehow I have managed to never actually own a General's Handbook. And I am grossly out of shot here. Does this camera move again? What happened here? What are we doing, buddy? Can we just stay where I put you? Anyway. So, what was I saying? Yeah, I've never actually owned a General's Handbook up until now, which, you know, you don't need it in order to play the game, per se. You can have access to all of the points through various other means. There's an app and stuff like that, which I have. But it's all the extra stuff in the book, and in this particular case, it's the like I said, the character generator, the hero generator, was a huge pull for me. Something that I really wanted to check out. and you know, so anyway, that's something I'm super excited for sure. Also, it would be nice to see. I only have I think a few in the like the core rule book has like a few of the battle plans in it, and so this will have more battle plans, which is just sort of ends up being more fodder for my campaign as well. So just more ideas on setup and more ideas on, you know, interesting dynamics for a battle plan. So, and it's just a matter of coming up with good reasons that they're fighting, putting some good flavor on it, all that good stuff. But the I don't know, I'm super excited for this campaign, put it that way. Something I've been like mulling over, especially at work and stuff, on the days where I have more free time to think than I know what to do with. Hey. Looks like my wife has decided to join the stream. Hello. But yeah, so this is like I'm real excited. Let's put it that way. The campaign is going to be a lot of fun. Put some interesting twists on things. I think my friend Jason is playing a I think he was either going to play, and I'll have to forgive me because I can't remember the actual plan for him. But I know he was either going to do a straight up Wanderer's army, or he was going to do a Living City army with Cities of Sigmar, and that was going to be predominantly or very heavy into Wanderers, because he picked up a bunch of that stuff a while ago and was super excited to use it, play with it. So we had come up with an interesting special rule for him, because ultimately what I'm going to be doing is basically printing out a map of the area of Shaiish that we are in, or maybe even all of Shaiish. That is like the maps that are available through Games Workshop currently. And then we're basically going to like pick a point on that map and be like, okay, you know, like my army is from here. And we're going to, the idea behind this, by the way, is to take what Games Workshop has given us in terms of like knowledge of the realm. And I want to, much like, if you look at any of the old Warhammer Fantasy Battle, old world lore, it was this rich fabric and weave of like history of like the different cities and the factions and the back and forths and the wars and the heroes, and there was just so much that went into that. And right now, where we're at in Age of Sigmar is at a place where essentially they're starting to build that, but it doesn't quite exist yet. Like, you know, like that's the kind of background that it takes years and years to flesh out. And I think they're off to a really good start. But the idea is that I wanted to create, at least within our gaming circle, like our own sort of lore and history and stuff like that. And I wanted this campaign to basically be the local history of this particular area in the Realm of Death in Shaiish. So that's my overall plan. And then by sort of like publishing it and putting it online for hopefully people to check out and enjoy, you know, it sort of like gets that going. And I'm not vain enough to think that somehow this narrative campaign that I'm starting with a couple of my friends is somehow going to influence an entire game and blah blah blah. But for us, it will sort of have that effect. And so for that alone, I'm excited. And yeah, so all right. I think the gold on the last one of these is drying, so we're just going to kind of flip back over here for a second. And I'm going to take these and kind of spin them around, and we're just going to do one of these. Shiny. So you can see the blue gradient on the flames, and you can see that the gold is now done on the sconces. And I really... Again, I enjoy the way that this looks. I like this gold. It's brighter. It stands out a little bit more. I like the cold gold aspect of it. The temperature of the gold is nice. So yeah, ultimately, I think these are done. Maybe I will put some kind of a shade onto the gold at some point. But right now, realistically, it's good enough. I feel like a wash. I mean, if I do a gloss wash, then that will keep the shiny sort of luster of it going a little bit longer, because it won't mat it out. But the only shade I have in a gloss right now, unless I mix in gloss medium, which I might, but really the only option I have right now is Reichland Flesh Shade, which is like a reddish, like flesh wash. And while that could work, and it's like the main reason I bought that one was for warming gold. And that's the opposite of what I want to do here. So I might end up using just like a watered down black or something like that, just to kind of like emphasize the shadows on it. But I don't want to like change the temperature of the gold. Anyway, okay, so I think that's done. We're gonna call that, yeah, we're gonna call that project done. Those are gonna make their way over to the done pile once this stream is over. Again, I just don't feel like kind of getting up and climbing around over couches and stuff trying to put that thing away. I want to work on this, or let's see, what do I have available to me that's going to be like useful? You know what? For funsies, we're gonna work on this guy just because. All right, so we're gonna switch back down. So I got this guy primed up for the stream last week. I didn't end up really doing anything with him specifically because I wasn't sure the color scheme I was going to go with. I think I've since figured that out. I did like a quick, like half a test model. It was just enough to see like, which direction I liked for the color scheme. And so I think I've got that nailed down. So I actually blue tacked, I believe, this guy together a little bit so I can actually pull him apart to make the painting a little bit easier on myself. If I can loosen that up a little bit. Give it a little wiggle. Come on. Don't want to break you. There we go. Alright, so we freed that up. Let's use another piece of blue tack to kind of sponge that off of him. Get in there. I'm gonna do this. One of the interesting properties of blue tack is it sticks to itself more than it sticks to anything else. Alright, that's good. Go. All right, so not expecting to go crazy with this guy. I'm not expecting to get a ton done tonight, specifically, but I'm going to work on him a little bit. And, yeah, it's going to be fun. So I was trying, like I said last week a little bit, I was trying to figure out what paint scheme I wanted to do for these guys. The way my paints that I was just using. Should we clean up after ourselves? Don't want to leave a mess. This paint right here. You were there and you were there. Okay, good. We need these. Come on. Where'd you come? So basically this guy is a plague priest. Part of the Skaven clan Pestilence line of minis. His other bit of the robe I just pulled off is right here, and I will be painting that separately, and then I'll glue it all together later. But the Skaven are a faction, a race of rat men. They're like mutant hybrid rat people. And they're split into a bunch of different clans, one of which is Clan Pestilence, of which this fellow is a ranking member. And their whole thing is they are trying to conquer the world because all Skaven believe they are sort of the, I guess for lack of a better term, the master race. They believe that Skaven are superior to all other forms of life and should wipe the mortal realms clean of everything that is not Skaven. So they're just genocidal rat men. But that being said, this particular group, the Pestilence, they aim to do so through the use of essentially biological warfare. They, as the name Pestilence and Plague Monk or Plague Priest might, bring to mind, they use a lot of plagues and disease and pestilence and things like that to as weapons. So yeah, that's kind of his thing. So this guy in particular, he, as I said, is sort of one of the ranking members within the hierarchy. Probably will not end up being the general for my army. But he is definitely classified as a hero, and there will be multiple of these within my army. One of the sort of paint schemes for these guys that is widely used is just using drab, like olive greens, and I considered it. But it literally, like, you're painting the entire model in like a drab green, and it was just too monotone for me, even with like, highlighting and shading and all of that. Like, it was just too much of one color, and I just didn't like the overall look and the vibe. So this we're going to be the paint scheme I settled on is going to be actually like an odd throwback. I have here one of my very first models I ever painted. This goes back to like middle school probably. And this is one of the old Gray Seers from Warhammer Fantasy Battles. Still made of metal. Yep, very metal. And this is one of the old school sculpts here, but you can see I did like a green for the little cowl and the hood. And then for the robes themselves, I did those in kind of like a cream color. So I've become a little bit more refined in my painting since, being 14, 12, whatever. So I'm going to go for a similar scheme, but hopefully it will turn out a little bit better. But yeah. And I tried it, like I said, on a test model. I didn't finish it all the way, but I got it through at least base coats and realized that I already liked it way better than the all green version of it. So I was like, all right, it's good enough. I know where I'm going with this. So here we are. My plan is to at least base coat this guy tonight. Let's see. We got about 40 minutes left. So chances are I will get through base coating his robes and probably about it. But I'll see what I can do. There's like that fine point you reach where you're trying to go fast, but you also want to be like have a decent result. If this was just like another plague monk, like rank and file battle line guy, I would probably just haul ass through this whole thing and not really give a shit if I get paint all over everything. But like for this guy, as he's a hero, I'd like for the quality of his finished product to be at least a little bit better than your average rank and file. This is Xandri Dust I'm using as a base coat here. And then over this, we will be using Ushabti Bone and Screaming Skull. Somewhere in there, I will probably be using Seraphim Sepia, whatever, as sort of like a recess wash for him. But anyway, that's the specifics of the colors I'm using for those that are keeping track or at all interested. Moving on over to this little bit here. Essentially, we just need to get the sleeve. All right. Let's see what's going on. At least you can see my hands. That's kind of, honestly, sometimes that's a step up. I have a bad habit of wandering. Listen. Trying to learn to keep things stationary so that the camera can actually pick them up. But anyway, this guy in particular has a plague sensor in his hand, so I assume it's got some noxious crap in it that's putting off foul stink and plague fumes and spreading that around the battlefield while he has his warpstone tipped staff. Warpstone is like a magical stone that these Skaven all seem to really like. And it too glows green. In fact, the plague sensor is probably going to have a bit of a green hue to it as well, as most, you know, like when you think of someone who is sick or you think of something that is plaguey and sickly and whatnot, the color green tends to spring to mind, which is why it's used on these guys so frequently. But I'll be trying to keep that to the actual plaguey stuff, and then his hood and cowl will be like a dark, like hunter forest green, like olive drab, somewhere in that range. And then the tip of his staff here is going to be like a bright, like glowing, I don't know, kind of like bright neon green, like kind of this color. This is scorpion green. It's an old one. Moot green here is another close color. So anyway, so that's what I'm going to be doing the stone with on the top here, and that will probably show up in that'll probably show up in the plague sensor as well, like in the center where the, like, again, the weird heat of the sensor is, and then it'll just kind of turn to a pale smoke from there. So I think I have relatively decent plans on what I'm doing with that particular part of it. It was just kind of figuring out what I was going to do with the robes. And honestly, I'm still trying to figure out his skin tone. I'm not 100% sure what I'm doing with his skin tone. Part of me wants to go the albino route with him. I feel like that could be kind of fun, because it would contrast nicely with the other colors. Like, this is going to be like a dirty brown beige for the robes, and having like the really pale white fur and like the super pale white skin could look pretty cool. And then everything else that he's wearing is going to be really dark against that for some nice contrast. On the other hand, I could go with like a more of like a fleshy color and then like dark brown fur, which is another popular way to paint these guys. There's really no right or wrong way to do it, I suppose. It's just kind of a matter of the scheme I choose and, you know, like what's going to look best. And I guess that's kind of what I'm trying to figure out, is what is going to look best. I don't want to paint all of them as albino, mind you. Just this guy in particular, I think, would look kind of cool that way. Most of the rest of them are probably going to be somewhere in the brown schemes. You know, reddish brown fur. I'll probably do like, you know, like let's say the maximum unit size for these guys, the Plague Monks, which is their like, you know, sort of rank and file troops. Maximum unit size is 40, which quite frankly is probably how I will be running them, in big giant blobs of 40. So that being said, what I'll probably do is take 4 groups of 10, and then each of those groups I will paint a different skin tone. So I'll have like one that's like kind of like a pale tan fur maybe, or like a light sandy brown, and then I'll do like black fur on one set, and then like a medium, like let's say like a ruddy reddish brown, and then just like a dark like brown, for lack of a better, you know. So it'll all be kind of variations on a theme. But I like the idea that like the hero, or at least this particular hero, I like the idea that he is like albino. I don't know. Just like, to me, that seems cool. I don't know what you guys think, but feel free to let me know in the chat and in the comments what you think about an albino rat man. Seems like a cool premise for a character to me. Unfortunately, I don't really know much about albinoism in general, so I don't want to make any like gross overstatements or you know, wrong assumptions or anything like that. They're at least more prone to sun damage. That much I know. Beyond that, I don't know anything about their... Maybe it makes no difference whatsoever to their immune system. I don't know. Then again, he doesn't need to be based on real-world fact. He can just be based on weird fantasy world fact, because that is the realm in which he lives. So that's the easy answer. In my world that I have created in my head, perhaps his albino rat men, the ones that are albino, tend to be a little sickly. Which is why maybe he was a little bit more prone to rising in the ranks of a disease-based faction. Who knows? Like I said, it doesn't have to be based in fact. It is, after all, a fantasy world. All right. Rinse that brush. Let that base coat dry a little bit more. All right. We're going to need some of this color next. This color next. Do I want to wash it first and then apply this color? Or do I want to highlight all the way up and then wash everything to tint? Yeah, that's what we're doing. We're doing it that way, guys. So we're going to leave the base coat. We're going to highlight all the way up to as high as we're going to highlight, which is essentially, I think, just going to be this screaming skull. Maybe. Is that? No, that's darker. That's more fleshy. Maybe we'll chuck some pallid witch flesh or something like that, like on the very tippy tips. But for now, we're going to stick with these three colors. We're going to highlight up through these, and then once that's done, I will shade everything with Seraphim Sepia and use it more like a filter. That's the plan, guys. That's the solid win. All right. Just kind of trying to blaze in some highlights here. I'll switch to a thinner brush eventually. We've got a very thinned down version of this Ushabti bone, and I'm sort of trying to look at this from top down and see where all the high points are that would be touched by the light. Everything the light touches is yours, Simba. Was that James Earl Jones that did the voice of, what was his dad? Simba's dad? I don't remember what his name was. I'm pretty sure that was James Earl Jones that did his voice. In the original, that is. Big fat belly, this rat. Alright, so we got the top of the sleeve, his elbow here, definitely up here. Alright. Some first level highlights going in here. Show you what that kind of looks like. So we hit the, again, the, let me get this lighting less harsh on the video. There we go. You can see there, like, I got the, like, the very tops of, like, his knee and his thigh and, like, the top folds. But if you look at it here, like, there's still, like, shadow in the shadow, or, like, the base coat, at least. Not shadow, per se. No, I didn't get his back, like, at all. Okay. Always a good idea to rotate your Mini. It actually just occurred to me that a lot of this stuff I'm highlighting now is going to be covered by his, or at least partially covered by his robe, or his other arm, rather. So the things I'm highlighting might not actually be in highlight, but that's all right. If they're covered, you'll never see it. Ah! So I win. A lot of the lessons I'm employing here and the things that I've learned from the last couple of models that I've actually painted. So the Necromancer that I did used a lot of these sort of light tricks with, you know, trying to get like highlighting in a top-down fashion, make lighting look a little bit more sort of realistic. And on the cape, specifically on the White King that I just did on the stream, I don't know, a couple of weeks ago now. That was very much sort of in the same style. And I set myself a while ago the challenge of sort of like trying to learn to paint with light a little bit better. And get, you know, highlights that look like they're actually light highlights, as opposed to, you know, like a lot of the Games Workshop style is everything, like the panel just gets painted a color and then all of the edges get an equal highlight, which I guess for a gaming piece looks kind of cool. And all of these are, you know, at the end of the day, gaming pieces. But like, I also kind of like putting, or at least trying to put on the heroes like a little bit of extra something into the models, so that they just look a little bit nicer. Like I said, especially the heroes. I'm not going to necessarily take the time to do this on the rank and file troops or even like super elite troops, you know, but heroes, that's where you got to take your time and make them look nice. You can always go back to and like hit the other troops at some point, you know, like there's nothing saying you can't repaint something. But if I'm going to be painting 80 of essentially the same model, which I'm staring down the barrel of doing that with the Plague Monks, you know, if I'm going to be painting 80 of them, I don't want to have to paint them all in the same level of detail, at least in, like I said, in the initial pass. I'm just going to kind of do a rough job on them just to kind of get them done and get them ready for the table, so that hopefully they'll look good on camera, because I'm going to be using them all in the campaign at some point. I actually, that being said, one of the first few battle reports I'm going to be doing with my sort of like introduction series, one of the first things I plan to do is a battle with Gloomspite kits. And I have, I think it's like just shy of 600 points, which isn't a lot, of Gloomspite kits. It's a lot of the Squig Rider stuff. I'll have them on the stream at some point soon, because I need to get those painted up for that. And the more I think about it, the more I really want to use those particular models. And I may have to, I think I might have to pick up like a box of their like rank and file foot troops, just like the Night Goblins. But I mean, that's easy enough. I'm sure eBay has them kicking around somewhere for pretty cheap. So joys of eBay. All right, well, I think let's do one more pass with this highlight color. Ultimately, I'm doing like broad highlights with these broad passes, because like the first color I did is like my sort of base coat that is effectively going to be like my recess color. And this is more or less going to be my mid-tone, kind of. So I definitely want it. I want it to be seen when I put extra highlights on top of it, but I don't want it to be like overpowering either. So I want it to be just right. Sort of Goldilocks syndrome. I'm liking where this guy's going. We haven't been at this very long, and he's already sort of starting to take shape in a nice way, so. All right. I like what I'm seeing. I like where this guy's going. All right, so try and show this guy off a little bit so you can see what all I've done so far. So again, we base coated him in this color right here, which is nope, that's Xandri Dust. So we did that, and that's the sort of darker beige color you can see on there. And then we took a Shabdibone and we watered that way down, and we did several glazed layers to kind of blend loosely from the that base color into the sort of initial pass of highlights. And now I am rinsing my brush, and we're going to retire this big beast brush, which has done us pretty good up until now. But we're going to set this aside, and we're going to grab a thinner brush. This one will do the trick. Back to our, what is this? A Citadel medium layer brush. We're going to get some Screaming Skull. And this is going to be our next step in the highlighting process. So we're going to scoop some of this onto our wet palette, set the pot aside, rinse our brush to get the out of the ferrule because sloppy, and should not be using my halfway decent brushes for scooping paint. Okay. I'm going to water that down quite a bit. A little bit in our brush, bleed off the excess. All right, and then this we're going to, I'm going to use this largely, I think, much like I did on some of the other guys. I'm going to use this in kind of a stippling method. And we're just going to stipple onto the extreme folds on these, and wherever light is super gathered. So you're going to see that highlight color that I previously placed, and then where all of the dots from the stippling, which that's all stippling is for those that don't already know that. I feel like that's kind of a, I don't know, a common art term for all kinds of things, but you know, if you don't know, now you know. So stippling is just putting a bunch of dots on there. And so we are putting on a bunch of dots in this light beige color. And the idea is that that will sort of read as texture on the model when you're looking at it. And it will specifically, hopefully, look like thread in like a, I imagine this to be sort of a rough burlap kind of material. And I'm going to be coming along with an even brighter, like off-white after this is done to pick up some of the more extreme kind of and realistically, too, the stippling that I'm doing with this brush, this doesn't come to like a crazy fine point. So it's going to be, they're going to be slightly larger dots. And then I'll come along with a finer pointed brush and really kind of dial in the stippling and the dots with that. So yeah, that's the technique I'm going for here. So we're going for like the edges, we're going for the tops of the folds, etc. Places where light is definitely going to sort of collect. The edges. Yeah. But yeah, this will hopefully add some nice transition between the previous work we've done I feel like this brush is not quite giving me the result I want. I should probably change it up. I'm gonna try a little bit longer with this one before we switch to something smaller. These tattered edges of the cloth here. All right. Main body is done. Stick one along here. And I've really taken to this technique over the last couple of models I've used it on. Like, I thoroughly enjoy it in general, but I think it gives a really nice effect when all is done, said and done. And it's not super difficult. Like, it's sure, it's a little tedious, a little time consuming, because you're sitting here just making a bunch of little dots all over it, but I feel like the end result, especially, like I said, this is only on like hero models and, you know, like special characters and stuff like that. So it's not like you're doing it on every sort of rank and file guy. That would take forever. But it'll be nice to come back to, like, for instance, my Undead Army, which is like very much a passion project for me. That's something that, like, I don't mind pouring countless hours into, because it's the end result is going to be something super awesome that I'm going to be super proud of for a long time to come. So, yeah. All right. All right. All that done. All right, so we're going to put this brush away. What do we got? Ooh, we are just about out of time here. All right, well, that might be where we have to call it, guys. Because much as I would love to keep going, I have work in the morning and things that I need to get to before I'm ready to go for the night. But let me quickly sort of dry fit this together so you can see what we got going on so far. Come on, little fella. I know you want to do it. There you go. Almost. There we go. That's better. All right. So here's what we've got going on. Yeah, this guy painted up to about this point right here. You can see we've got some texture starting to form on those robes, the sort of beige under robes. And the idea that I'm going for is like just like old stained, like what used to be white cloth, you know, and it's just over time it's just kind of yellowed, and at the bottom is hopefully going to be a little bit more stained. We'll put some texture stuff on that probably, and do some wash stippling at the bottom to like really crank up the dirty dinginess of it. But for, you know, like sort of a first pass at highlighting and stuff for the robes tonight, I'm pretty darn happy with where we're at. For I think I worked on this guy for maybe a half hour, so realistically I like where he's I like where he's headed. I like where he's going. He's looking good. So we'll keep on trucking on this guy, maybe in the next stream. We'll see. This guy, the project that this guy is attached to, my Pestilence army, is not what I would really consider to be like a painting priority for me, in terms of the campaign and that kind of thing. So realistically, this was just sort of something I had like nearby that I was able to just grab and work on right now. But I will probably end up setting him aside for the time being after today, and I'll probably return to him maybe for next stream specifically, just to kind of like try and get him finished up on stream. That would be nice. But you know what, why don't we get that out of the way. I'm just gonna, if I can find my mouse, switch it over here. So yeah, I'll probably work on this guy, I would assume, on the next stream, just to actually get like a little bit more work into him, because I don't want to leave a model that's like half finished for a while, and I've been wanting to paint this guy for quite some time. But I do want to get, I need to get to those goblins, the Boomspike Gits, and get those guys painted up for the start of the campaign. Because I do, like I said, I plan to use them in like the first, probably in the first like couple of battle reports that I try and do. So anyway, the more I think about it, the more I definitely want to use those guys, and I think it'll be fun, and I really need to get those guys done and painted up for it. So probably over the next like week or so, I'll probably look to get some of that stuff primed up and get it ready to go. And then once that's primed and ready, I will, after this guy's done, which I'll work on him probably next week's stream, then I'll go ahead and pull up the goblins, and we'll get cranking on those guys. But that's it. That's all I got for tonight, guys. I super appreciate everybody tuning in, and those that hopped into the chat to say hi. I appreciate it. Thanks to everybody else that kind of like came in and checked it out, and to everybody that checks it out in the future. I hope you get something out of it. I hope you enjoyed it, and that it brought you some sort of entertainment. I appreciate you guys coming by and spending some time with me. I know I had fun, and hopefully you guys did too. In the meantime, until next we meet, I hope you all take good care of yourselves. Stay well. Don't forget to wear a mask. Don't forget Black Lives Matter. And we will see you next week. So bye-bye for now.